Maria Curie, a genius like no other. Part 1. Born in silence, destined for greatness. Chapter 1. A child of partitioned Poland. In the frigid winter of November 1867, amidst the shadows of Russian-occupied Poland, a child was born who would one day change the fate of science forever. Maria Salomea Skłodowska-Lader, known to the world as Marie Curie, came into the world in Warsaw, the youngest of 5 children in a family rich in intellect but impoverished by circumstance. Her father, Władysław Skłodowski, was a teacher of mathematics and physics, passionate about the scientific method, but barred from upward mobility under the heavy-handed rule of Tsarist Russia. Her mother, Bronisława, was a principal at a girls' school, strict and intelligent, but racked by the pain of tuberculosis. From her earliest days, Maria lived under the dual influence of education and grief. By the age of 10, Maria had already lost her mother to illness and one of her sisters to typhus. She internalized her suffering not in tears but in study. Her father, recognizing her natural aptitude, allowed her to access the school's laboratory and equipment tools she handled with a quiet reverence that belied her age. In a world where women were not allowed to attend university in Poland, Maria devoured books in secret. She read Newton, Galileo, Descartes, and Voltaire. Her mind expanded with each new idea, but Poland's political repression made dreams feel like chains. The Russian Empire forbade Polish language instruction and erased national identity from classrooms. But Maria, unbroken, joined the secret Flying University, an underground education network that taught young Poles in defiance of Tsarist rule. It was there that her dream crystallized. She would become a scientist, no matter the cost. Chapter 2. A Pact Between Sisters. Higher education for women in Poland was impossible. But Maria's older sister, Bronia, had a plan. She would study medicine in Paris, and when she was settled, she would send for Maria. But they needed money. So the 2 sisters made a pact. Maria would work as a governess for several years, sending wages to Bronia. Then, when Bronia was established, she would return the favor. Thus, at just 18, Maria left home to work for a wealthy family in the countryside. There, she lived in solitude, her days consumed by childcare and the bitter realization of class divides. But by night, she studied. She taught herself advanced mathematics and physics, translating French texts by candlelight. She also fell in love with the son of the family she worked for, but the relationship was forbidden due to her social status. His family saw her as just a servant. Heartbroken but undeterred, Maria buried the pain and returned to Warsaw, where she worked in a makeshift laboratory to stay connected with her dream. Finally, in 1891, at age 24, the call from Paris arrived. Her sister kept her promise. Maria packed her few belongings and boarded a train westward. The girl from Warsaw was heading to the intellectual capital of the world. Chapter 3. The Parisian Struggle. Paris was beautiful but brutal. The lectures at the Sorbonne were in rapid French, a language Maria had yet to master fluently. She was often cold, hungry, and broke. She rented a tiny attic apartment, surviving on bread, tea, and her burning ambition. Yet even in hardship, she excelled. Within 2 years, she finished first in her class in physics. A year later, she earned a degree in mathematics. Her professors were stunned. Who was this quiet, intense woman who never missed a lecture, who asked better questions than most men twice her age? She was now Maria French, adaptation of her Polish name, and was finally ready to enter the scientific world. But how? Laboratories didn't welcome women. Jobs in academia were scarce. And though her intellect shone, she remained an outsider. Fate intervened when she was introduced to a quiet physicist named Pierre Curie. Chapter 4. The Curie Connection. Pierre Curie was a man of few words and deep thought. He had already made his mark with research into magnetism and piezoelectricity. But what struck Marie was his humility. What struck Pierre was her mind. Their relationship was not a story of sudden passion, but of shared purpose. They were intellectual equals, bound by curiosity and a desire to understand the unseen. They married in 1895, foregoing wedding gowns and rings. Instead, they spent their honeymoon cycling through the French countryside, discussing atoms, forces, and the mysteries of matter. For a wedding gift, Pierre gave Marie a bicycle. For each other, they gave a laboratory, built with dreams and discipline. Chapter 5. The Search for the Invisible. In 1896, a discovery changed the world. Henri Becquerel found that uranium emitted rays that passed through solid objects. These rays were not like X-rays. They were something new, mysterious, invisible, and powerful. Marie, intrigued, made it her mission to uncover their nature. She began her research in a leaky shed next to the School of Physics and Chemistry. There was no heat. Her clothes were often soaked in chemicals. Her hands blistered from acids. Still, she worked sometimes 16 hours a day. She coined the term radioactivity and discovered that uranium wasn't unique. Other substances also emitted radiation. Soon, she and Pierre isolated a new element, which she named polonium, in honor of her homeland. But that wasn't all. In December 1898, the Curies announced the discovery of a second, far more radioactive element, radium. Chapter 6. Fame but not fortune. The scientific world exploded with excitement. Radium glowed in the dark. It emitted heat. It killed cancer cells. It seemed like a miracle element, but the process of extracting it from ore was grueling. Marie processed tons of pitchblende, boiling and grinding until her hands were burned and her lungs damaged. She never patented her methods. She gave her knowledge freely to the world, believing science should belong to humanity. Meanwhile, others profited from her discoveries. Radium became a fad used in cosmetics, water, even toothpaste. In 1903, the Nobel Committee awarded the Physics Prize to Marie, Pierre, and Becquerel. At first, they only intended to honor the men, but Pierre insisted Marie's name must be included, and so she became the first woman to win a Nobel Prize. But just as she was finally being recognized, tragedy would strike. Part 2. Tragedy, Triumph, and the Radiance Within. Chapter 7. A Shattering Loss. In April 1906, the streets of Paris were slick with rain. Pierre Curie, in deep thought as always, stepped absent-mindedly into the street. A horse-drawn carriage, weighed down by a heavy load, could not stop in time. Pierre was crushed beneath its wheels. He died instantly. Marie's world, once filled with the brilliance of collaboration and love, collapsed into silence. The news devastated the scientific community, but to Marie it was not only a loss of a partner in work, it was the loss of the only man who had ever truly understood her mind and heart. She refused to speak for days. Her daughters, Irene and Eve, still so young, saw their mother wear nothing but black. Grief clung to her like a second skin. She wrote in her diary, "Pierre, my Pierre, how will I go on?" But science, once again, became her sanctuary. Chapter 8. The first female professor at the Sorbonne. Weeks after Pierre's death, the Sorbonne approached Marie with an unprecedented offer to take over her late husband's lectureship. It would make her the first female professor in the university's 650-year history. On the 5th of November, 1906, she stepped into the lecture hall. Hundreds of students filled the room, some curious, some skeptical. She walked to the blackboard, calm and confident. Her first words echoed with power. When one considers the origin of the properties of uranium rays, one must begin with the recent discoveries of Monsieur Becquerel. She continued exactly where Pierre had left off. There was no mention of death, no tribute to loss, only knowledge immortal, eternal, carried forward by the woman who refused to fade. Chapter 9. The Second Nobel Prize. Marie resumed her work on radioactive elements, now with even greater intensity. Her health suffered, her bones ached, her fingers trembled, but her mind remained sharp. In 1911, the Nobel Committee awarded her the Nobel Prize in Chemistry for the discovery of radium and polonium, and her continued research into the isolation of radioactive elements. This time, the award was hers alone. She became the first person in history to win 2 Nobel Prizes in 2 different fields. Her achievement was not only unmatched, it remains so today. But instead of celebration, the press turned on her. Rumors of a relationship with physicist Paul Langevin married man-fueled scandalous headlines. She was harassed outside her home. Protesters shouted at her. The Nobel Committee begged her not to attend the ceremony. She refused. She traveled to Stockholm with her head held high, accepted her award, and delivered a lecture that reminded the world why she mattered. I am among those who think that science has great beauty, and I, for one, will continue in my path with great determination. Chapter 10. The Battlefields of World War I. In 1914, war consumed Europe. While scientists fled, Marie Curie moved toward the front lines. She recognized the potential of X-rays to diagnose injuries. With the help of her daughter Irene, she developed mobile radiology units, which became known as petites Curies. She personally trained over 150 women to operate them. Together, they X-rayed over 1 million wounded soldiers. Marie often drove the mobile units herself, navigating muddy roads and shell-pocked fields. She worked under fire, never asking for payment or recognition. She refused medals, saying, "All that matters is to save lives." The battlefield, once filled with death, now echoed with science, and at its heart stood Marie Curie, the tireless healer. Chapter 11. A Family of Scientists. Back in Paris, Marie continued her work at the Radium Institute, which she founded to explore the medical uses of radioactive elements. She also raised 2 daughters with unwavering discipline and care. Her elder daughter, Irene, inherited her brilliance and drive. Under Marie's mentorship, Irene studied chemistry and physics. In 1935, Irene and her husband, Frederic Joliot-Curie, were awarded the Nobel Prize in Chemistry for their discovery of artificial radioactivity. Thus, Marie Curie became the matriarch of a Nobel family, the only one in history to produce 5 Nobel Prizes. Her younger daughter, Eve, chose a different path. A gifted pianist and writer, she later authored the acclaimed biography Madame Curie, introducing her mother's story to millions around the world. Chapter 12. The Price of Discovery. By the 1920s, Marie's body began to betray her. She suffered from cataracts, constant fatigue, and severe bone pain. Her blood cells were deteriorating, slow erosion caused by years of exposure to radiation. In those days, the dangers of radioactivity were still misunderstood. There were no lead shields, no safety protocols. Marie had carried radium in her pockets, slept near it, inhaled it. She had given the world a new science at the cost of her health. Yet she never regretted it. She continued lecturing, fundraising for the Radium Institute, and advocating for scientific education for women. Her final years were spent surrounded by students, experiments, and a sense of quiet satisfaction. Chapter 13. Death and Immortality. On the 4th of July, 1934, in a sanatorium in Saint-Salmoz, France, Marie Curie passed away from aplastic anemia, a disease caused by prolonged radiation exposure. She was 66 years old. She was buried beside Pierre, reunited with the man who had shared her journey. Decades later, in 1995, the French government moved their remains to the Panthéon in Paris, a mausoleum reserved for the nation's greatest heroes. Marie Curie became the first woman laid to rest there for her own merits. Her notebooks, clothing, and even her furniture remain radioactive to this desolate testaments to a life lived on the atomic edge. Part 3. Legacy in Light, Memory in Motion. Chapter 14. The Radium Institute, A Legacy of Healing. Founded in 1914, the Radium Institute, now Curie Institute in Paris, was the crown jewel of Marie Curie's vision, a place where science would serve humanity. Unlike elite research facilities built for prestige, the Radium Institute blended research and medicine. It became a hub for cancer treatment and scientific breakthroughs. Here, Marie trained generations of physicists, chemists, and radiologists. Her office was modest, her approach disciplined. She personally oversaw both lab experiments and patient care. She believed that the scientist must never lose sight of the human purpose of discovery. In the decades that followed, the Institute would become one of the world's leading centers for oncology research, and its methods would influence the structure of modern hospitals around the globe. Chapter 15. The Global Symbol of Women in Science. Marie Curie did not set out to become a feminist icon, yet, by her example, she shattered countless barriers. In an era when women were not even allowed to vote in many countries, Marie Curie became the first woman to win a Nobel Prize, the first person ever to win 2 Nobels, the first female professor at the Sorbonne, the first woman to be interred in the Pantheon for her own achievements. Young women across Europe and the United States wrote her letters, calling her a role model, a miracle, a heroine. She responded to many of them personally, encouraging them to pursue education, to defy convention, and to contribute to the world with courage and integrity. In time, her image would appear in classrooms, on currency, in museums, and on monuments. But more importantly, her presence lived on in every woman who dared to enter a laboratory and say, "I belong here." Chapter 16. Marie and Einstein, A Bond Beyond Physics. Marie Curie was not only respected by the public, she was revered by her scientific peers. Among her closest friends was Albert Einstein, who once said, "Marie Curie is, of all celebrated beings, the only one whom fame has not corrupted." They met during the Solvay Conference's prestigious gatherings of the greatest scientific minds of the era. Einstein, Planck, Bohr, Rutherford, and Curie all shared the same tables, but it was Marie who commanded the room with quiet brilliance. Einstein admired her humility and courage, especially during the media scandal of 1911. When the press attacked her personal life, Einstein wrote a letter urging her to ignore the reptiles and continue her work. He told her, "You are a great person. I am convinced that you would have made your way even if you had been born a man." Their bond, rooted in mutual respect, was a rare example of gender equality at the intellectual summit. Chapter 17. The Eternal Elements, Curium and Beyond. In 1944, more than a decade after her death, American scientists discovered a new element during research related to nuclear energy. They named it curium, symbol Cm, atomic number 96, in honor of Marie and Pierre Curie. It was a fitting tribute. Curium was highly radioactive, used in space exploration and medical devices. In its atomic core burned the echoes of Marie's laboratory, the pot-bellied stove, the boiling beakers, the chalkboard full of equations. Along with curium, there are over 100 institutions, schools, and awards named after Marie Curie. Her face appears on stamps from over 40 countries. Hospitals bear her name. Foundations in her honor fund scholarships for young scientists. Marie Curie became not just a scientist, but a global symbol of knowledge, perseverance, and light. Chapter 18. Letters from the Heart. In the archives of the Curie Museum lie hundreds of personal letters, scribbled in Polish and French, some ink-stained, others smudged by chemical residue. They reveal another side of Marie Curie, woman behind the microscope. She wrote to her father, detailing experiments and homesickness. she wrote to Pierre, even after his death, in quiet reveries of longing. She wrote to her daughters, always encouraging, never sentimental, always insisting they live for purpose. In one letter to her daughter Irene, she wrote, "Do not live in the shadow of others. Find your own fire and carry it through the storm." In another, she told a young female student, "Do not fear hard work. Nothing in life is to be feared. It is only to be understood." These letters are not only intimate, they are legacies paper fragments of a soul that refused to break. Chapter 19. The Radioactive Notebook. In the Paris library, where Marie Curie's papers are kept, researchers must wear protective gear to handle her original notebooks. Even over 100 years later, they remain radioactive. This singular fact has stunned generations, that the notebooks of a scientist, worn with her handwriting, still glow invisibly with the very energy she discovered. Her science lives on literally, atomically. They symbolize not danger, but dedication. They are time capsules of genius, silent but powerful, just like the woman who wrote them. Chapter 20. An Undying Flame. When asked in her final years if she regretted anything, Marie Curie replied, "Number. My work gave meaning to my life, and I believe I have added something to the understanding of nature." She never chased money. She refused personal wealth. She donated Nobel Prize winnings to labs and causes. Her legacy is not measured in possessions, but in progression, every cancer therapy, every radiation treatment, every satellite using radioactive isotopes. Even now, when scientists write equations for decay or use radioactive tracers, they walk in her footsteps. She is not just remembered. She is still working through the atoms she first unveiled to the world. Part 4. The Woman Who Held the Atom. Chapter 21. A Night in the Laboratory. Dramatized scene. Paris. Winter. 1902. Midnight. The Radium Institute is dark, except for a dim yellow glow emanating from one lone room. Inside, Marie Curie stands by a large table covered in beakers and samples. Her hands are raw from chemical burns, but her eyes are locked on a flask of pale blue light. The radium glows faintly, illuminating her face. She speaks to the silence, her voice low, reverent. This light is not from the sun, nor from the fire. It is from the atom, a secret held inside the bones of matter. Who gave it voice, and why now? She picks up a pencil and records a few numbers, her penmanship sharp and clear despite the hour. She doesn't yawn. She doesn't tremble. This is not a woman who is tired. This is a woman possessed not by madness, but by meaning. Chapter 22. The Pressure of Fame. Though Marie never sought fame, it followed her like a ghost. Wherever she traveled, reporters swarmed her. Headlines referred to her as the mother of the atom, the queen of science, the lady of light. But she hated the spotlight. She disliked interviews and rejected vanity. Her clothing was simple, her tone measured, her life entirely focused on work. When she visited the United States in 1921, President Warren G. Harding welcomed her to the White House and presented her with a gram of radium, a gift from American women who raised over $100,000 to support her research. In her speech of thanks, she said, "Radium is not to enrich anyone. It is for all. Science belongs to no one. It is a torch we pass." Chapter 23. Conversations with her daughters, fictionalized. One summer evening, Marie sat with her daughters under the apple tree in the backyard of their modest home in Sceaux. Irene was preparing her thesis. Eve was writing a piano piece. "Do you remember," Irene asked, "the first time you showed me a microscope?" Marie smiled. "You were 5. You put a hair under the lens and screamed when you saw how big it looked." Eve giggled. And then she ran around saying everything was made of secrets. Marie looked at them both. "It is true. The world is made of secrets, but they are not to be feared. You must uncover them, even when it hurts." The girls nodded, unaware that they were being handed a philosophy for l'iPhone that would shape Nobel laureates, authors, and dreamers. Chapter 24, Letters Never Sent, Imaginative Inner Monologue. In her final years, Marie often wrote unsent letters to Pierre. She kept them in a small box by her bed. In one of these entries found posthumously, she had written, "I see your coat hanging still by the laboratory door. Sometimes I imagine your footsteps. I do not believe you left. You are still in the air when the flask bubbles, in the chalk dust on the floor, in the pause between questions." She never remarried. She never stopped being his partner. Chapter 25, Honors Beyond Death. Marie Curie's funeral was private. No grand monuments, no eulogies from kings. But within months of her passing, the world began to immortalize her in every language. France issued a national day of mourning. Poland declared her a national hero. The International Committee on Atomic Weights honored her name on its scientific charts. The World Health Organization credited her legacy in the development of modern radiology. UNESCO declared her manuscripts World Heritage Documents. In the decades to come, countless women scientists from Rosalind Franklin to Chien-Shiung Wu to Donna Strickland would cite Marie Curie as their guiding star. Chapter 26, On the Moon, in the Mind. The Curie crater on the far side of the moon was named in her honor fitting because she herself once said, "We must believe that we are gifted for something, and that this thing, at whatever cost, must be attained." In classrooms across the earth, little girls and boys now learn her name before they even understand atoms. In hospitals, her discoveries pulse through the wires of cancer machines. In orbit, her name circles the planet etched on satellites using radioactive power. Chapter 27, Her Final Lecture, fictionalized. Before her last days, Marie addressed a group of students at the University of Paris. The lecture was never officially recorded, but eyewitnesses described it as hauntingly calm, beautifully fierce. She stood before a chalkboard, hands trembling slightly, and said, "You will hear that the atom is dangerous. Yes, so is knowledge, but ignorance is more so. The question is not whether we should know, but how we use what we know. That is the burden of the scientist. That is the soul of civilization." Silence followed. Not one student took their eyes off her. Do not chase glory. Chase the question. Chapter 28, A Room Full of Time. In the Curie Museum in Paris, Marie's laboratory remains exactly as she left it. Her glassware, her chalk, her microscope, even her coat still hang in place. Visitors are not allowed inside without special permission. Why? Because the room is still radioactive. Time has passed, but the particles still decay, still glow, still hum the name Curie. Her atoms linger in the air. Her energy, quite literally, has not faded. What other human being can we say this of? Chapter 29, What She Left Us. Marie Curie did not leave behind riches or palaces or dynasties. She left an institute that still treats cancer patients every day, a family that continued her work across generations, a field of science that exploded from her discoveries, a vision of womanhood that is intellectual, fierce, and free, a philosophy that embraces the unknown with courage. She taught us that genius is not lightning, it is persistence. That nobility is not inherited, it is earned through sacrifice. And that greatness comes not from glory, but from service to truth. Part 5, The Light That Never Fades. Chapter 30, The Soul of Science. Marie Curie was not interested in spectacle. She never performed for praise. What drove her was not ambition, but intellect united with empathy. She once said, "Be less curious about people and more curious about ideas." But her life suggests the opposite. Her ideas were for people. She fought to cure, to heal, to teach, to understand, not to dominate or profit. Her pursuit of radioactivity was not about power, it was about unveiling nature's secrets for the betterment of mankind. Her science had a soul. Chapter 31. In the footsteps of Titans. Only a handful of individuals in history truly changed the world. Newton gave us motion. Darwin gave us evolution. Einstein gave us relativity. Marie Curie gave us the atom's power. But unlike the others, she was born in poverty, labored in exile, suffered profound personal tragedy, and lived in a world hostile to her gender. She overcame every obstacle. She climbed the same mountain as the giants, and she climbed it alone, often in the dark, and from its peak she passed down the torch. Chapter 32. The Chemistry of Courage. There is a kind of chemistry that is never taught in school. It is not the combination of elements, but the fusion of will, discipline, and moral clarity. Marie Curie had this chemistry. She did not fear suffering. She saw it as a cost of discovery. She did not fear isolation. She found strength in solitude. She did not fear death. She had seen it early, her mother, her sister, her husband, and still she moved forward. She feared only one thing, ignorance, and so she spent her life confronting it. Chapter 33. A Letter to the Future, fictionalized. Dear child, reading this 100 years from now, I do not know your name, your country, or your language, but I believe you carry in you a question, a hunger, a calling. You may be told it is too hard, that you are not meant for such things, that your place is elsewhere. I was told that too. They said science was not for women, that knowledge was dangerous, that silence was safer. I did not listen. Please don't listen either. The world needs your light. Carry it, as I did, even when it burns your hands. Marie Curie. Chapter 34. What if she had not lived? Imagine a world without Marie Curie. No radiotherapy for cancer. No deep understanding of the atom. No woman's name in the annals of Nobel history until decades later. No blueprint for female scientific leadership. Entire fields of physics, chemistry, medicine, even space exploration would be poorer, delayed, or undeveloped. Marie Curie's absence would have been a global loss. But she did live. She did fight. And the world was forever changed. Chapter 35. Final Echoes. In the heart of Paris, late at night, the Radium Institute is quiet. Yet some say you can still feel something there, like a vibration in the floorboards, a hum in the walls, a presence, not haunting, but watching, not mourning, but guarding. Some believe it's the energy of science, others the echo of atoms. But maybe, just maybe, it is Marie Curie herself, her mind, her discipline, her devotion still woven into the building's bones. Her lab coats still glow faintly, her notes still radiate, her legacy still lives. Because light, once released, does not return to the dark. Chapter 36. Her Lasting Teachings. Marie Curie taught the world 5 great lessons. Science is for all. She opened doors for women in laboratories worldwide. Truth must be pursued regardless of cost, even when it hurts. Humility is the companion of genius. She never flaunted her brilliance. Grief can become purpose. She transformed sorrow into progress. Even a single soul can change history. Her life is the ultimate argument for the value of curiosity, of perseverance, and of an unwavering belief that understanding the world is the first step to saving it. Chapter 37. Eternal Flame. Marie Curie's tomb bears a simple inscription: Maria Skłodowska-Curie, 1867-1934. Physicist, chemist, pioneer, but her true monument is not made of stone. It is made of cancer patients saved, of students inspired, of atoms split and understood, of ideas freed from fear. She is eternal not in memory alone, but in motion. Every day, somewhere in the world, her science moves in wires, in cells, in stars. She lit a candle in the heart of the atom. and it still burns. Epilogue: The woman who held the atom. In every era, the world produces a few souls who seem chosen not by fate, but by fire. Marie Curie was one. She held the atom in her palm. She stared into its heart. She called forth its power not to destroy, but to illuminate. She held the future in her hands and handed it to us. May we carry it well. Part 6. Echoes Across Time. Chapter 38. The Girl Who Asked. Why? Every story begins with a question. For Marie Curie, that question was not dramatic. It was not shouted. It was whispered during a gray Warsaw afternoon in her father's study. Why does the magnet stick to the iron? Her father smiled and showed her the simple principles of attraction. But that question why became the core of her life. She asked it endlessly. Why do elements behave the way they do? Why does light pass through some matter but not others? Why do some materials emit invisible rays? That small question sparked the fire of a scientific revolution. It reminds us, never underestimate the child who dares to ask why. Chapter 39. Madame Curie at the Solvay Conferences. The year was 1927. A group photo was taken at the 5th Solvay Conference in Brussels. In the image stood the most brilliant minds of the 20th century: Einstein, Bohr, Schrödinger, Heisenberg, Dirac, and Curie. Out of the 29 scientists, only one was a woman, Marie Curie. She stood in the front row, elegant, composed, and unshaken. Her presence was not tokenistic. She belonged there. Many of the men in the photograph built theories on foundations that Marie had laid. Her discoveries about radioactivity had made possible much of what the quantum pioneers would later explore. Though quiet in person, her ideas spoke louder than any voice in the room. Chapter 40. Global Influence in Education and Policy. After her Nobel Prizes, Curie did not retreat into seclusion or luxury. She became an international advocate for education, especially for women and girls. She founded scholarship funds, lectured around the world, and insisted that universities must open their doors wider. In Poland, she helped establish Warsaw's Radium Institute in 1932, allowing Eastern Europe to access cancer treatments and advanced science for the first time. She was a rare figure who influenced not just science, but policy. When she traveled to the United States, she was received as a national hero. Newspapers followed her every move, yet she remained focused. She used her platform to push for more government funding in medical research and succeeded. Chapter 41. An Unknown Story, The Letters She Never Sent. Among the many letters in her archives are a handful of drafts unsent, scribbled without formal signature. One such note, likely written after her second Nobel Prize, was addressed to the next woman in science. In it, she wrote, "They will say, 'You are too bold, too quiet, too proud, too ambitious, too emotional, too cold, too fragile, too strong. Let them say it all, and then prove them all wrong. Find the truth and hold it gently, and if it burns you, good, that means it's real." This letter, never mailed, has become a manifesto for generations of young female scientists. Chapter 42. Radium, the Angel and the Demon. Though Marie Curie believed in the beneficial uses of radium, she lived long enough to see its dark side. In the 1920s, companies began adding radium to beauty creams and tonics, marketing it as a miracle cure. Worse still, radium girls, young women employed in factories to paint glow-in-the-dark watch dial, suffered horrific illnesses from ingesting the substance. Curie, upon learning this, was appalled. She began speaking more about safety in science and advocated for ethical oversight. Though she had no idea how severe radiation damage could be in her early years, she took moral responsibility when its dangers became clear. It was yet another moment where she placed truth above reputation. Chapter 43. What Einstein said at her funeral, fictionalized. It is said that Albert Einstein attended Marie Curie's funeral in silence. He gave no public eulogy, but in a private letter to his son, he wrote, "Today I stood by the grave of the only person I have ever truly considered morally superior to myself. She moved in light while the rest of us played with shadows. She was not just a scientist, she was a force of nature, disciplined by kindness and driven by curiosity." Such words from Einstein, a titan in his own right, speak volumes. Chapter 44. The Curies and the Nuclear Age. The discovery of radioactivity eventually led, indirectly, to the splitting of the atom. While Marie Curie had died long before the Manhattan Project, her name became entangled with atomic energy and its terrifying offspring, the atomic bomb. Some feared that her legacy would be corrupted by war. But scientists like Oppenheimer, Bohr, and Fermi emphasized Marie's intentions were purely peaceful. Her work was never about power or destruction, it was about healing and understanding. Curie's daughter Irene would later work in nuclear research, and her descendants would carry the same sense of ethical responsibility. Chapter 45. Museums, Films, and Memorials. Marie Curie's life has inspired over 10 major films and documentaries, including Radioactive, 2020, starring Rosamund Pike, dozens of books, graphic novels, and children's biographies, museums in Warsaw, Paris, and the U.S. dedicated to her memory, thousands of statues, stamps, and schools bearing her name. Her image is often portrayed in lab coats, with glowing vials or chalk-covered hands, symbolizing both grit and grace. To this day, no figure in science enjoys such a unique blend of respect across nations, genders, generations, and fields. Chapter 46. Her Name in the Stars. Astronomers honored her legacy by naming asteroid 7000 Curie in her name. A crater on the moon also bears her name. This is poetic justice. The woman who uncovered invisible light now has her name among the stars. She didn't just touch the earth, she altered the universe's vocabulary. She turned radioactive from a mystery into a mechanism, from a shadow into a spectrum. Chapter 47. The Empty Notebook Page. Inside one of her final journals, just before her passing, there is a blank page with a single line at the top. Radium. Final dosage. To be observed. No one knows if she ever completed that note. Some believe it was a last experiment. Others think she simply couldn't finish it. But perhaps it's symbolic. Perhaps Marie Curie left it blank for future scientists to continue. That page, now kept behind glass, is more than a scientific relic. It is an invitation. Chapter 48. Marie Curie today. What does Marie Curie mean to the world today? To a young girl in a refugee camp who dreams of becoming a chemist, she means hope. To a cancer patient undergoing radiation therapy, means life. To a physicist pushing the limits of quantum research, she means foundation. To every person who has been told you can't, she means proof. She is not just history. She is still working, still glowing, still burning in the heart of science itself. Part 7. Inheritance of the Atom. Chapter 49. The Bloodline of Brilliance. Marie Curie's legacy did not end with her death. It multiplied through her descendants. Irene Joliot Curie, her eldest daughter, inherited both her mother's mind and her resolve. Alongside her husband, Frederick Joliot, she discovered artificial radioactivity, a breakthrough that won them the 1,935 Nobel Prize in Chemistry. They continued Marie's tradition of merging science and social responsibility, promoting the peaceful use of nuclear energy while warning of its dangers. Meanwhile, Eve Curie, Marie's younger daughter, became a respected journalist and war correspondent. Her biography, Madame Curie, published in 1937, became an international bestseller and helped millions understand the power of intellect paired with humility. Ave later served UNICEF and worked to provide global humanitarian aid, proving that the Curie spirit extended beyond the lab. Chapter 50. The Institutions She Built. Marie Curie's two main scientific legacies, the Institut Curie in Paris and the Radium Institute in Warsaw, continue to lead cutting-edge research in oncology and radiation therapy. Today, the Institut Curie in France is one of Europe's largest cancer research centers. It treats over 14,000 patients annually, pushing the boundaries of personalized medicine. Poland's institute likewise thrives, housing state-of-the-art nuclear medicine labs. It is not just a building, it is a living embodiment of Marie's dream to bring science to the service of humanity. Her name is not just symbolic, it funds scholarships, inspires programs, and underwrites laboratories across the globe. Chapter 51. What Nobel Couldn't Measure. The Nobel Prizes acknowledged Marie Curie's genius, but they could never capture the totality of her influence. What prize honors the woman who made it acceptable for women to teach physics at a university? What award can measure the comfort she gave to thousands of cancer patients? What committee could quantify the number of lives shaped by her courage, her discipline, her truth? Marie Curie changed the definition of what a scientist could be, and, in doing so, she changed what a woman could be in the eyes of the world. Chapter 52. Her name in STEM programs around the world. Across continents, the name Curie appears in STEM scholarships for girls in sub-Saharan Africa, curriculums in Japanese middle schools, radiation safety protocols across Europe, Women in Science fellowships in Latin America, NASA Mars mission equipment inspired by her discoveries. In every scientific conference where diversity is championed, her name is invoked as the original trailblazer. She doesn't belong to France or to Poland or even to history. Marie Curie belongs to every mind that refuses to yield. Chapter 53. The Chemistry of Ethics. In a century where scientific advancement sometimes outpaces moral responsibility, Marie Curie's example remains a moral compass. She believed that science must serve humanity, not profit. Knowledge must be shared, not hoarded. Discovery is a duty, not a path to fame. When modern scientists debate the implications of gene editing, AI, or nuclear power, they return to principles Curie lived by. She was not naivish, knew power could be abused. But she also knew that progress with conscience was humanity's only hope. Chapter 54. The Invisible Glow of Courage. Courage, like radiation, is invisible. It cannot be seen, only felt. Marie Curie's courage was leaving her homeland to study in a foreign tongue, raising children while revolutionizing physics, walking into labs where no woman had ever stood, working with substances that burned her skin and bones, standing firm in the face of scandal, slander, and solitude. She didn't lift swords. She didn't command armies. Yet she fought one of the hardest battles, to be a woman of intellect in a world that denied her voice. And she won. Chapter 55 to 100 years later. What has she become? A century after her most important discoveries, Marie Curie has become more than a historical figure. She is a cultural symbol appearing in biographies for children, feminist literature, postage stamps, comic books, scientific role model rankings, TED Talks, global education posters. Even AI research draws from her principles of collaboration, transparency, and rigor. She has transcended her own field, becoming a universal story of perseverance. Chapter 56. A Dream Reimagined. If Marie Curie could return for a moment, what would she see? Girls studying quantum mechanics in Kabul, women leading physics departments at Oxford, young mothers launching startups in biotech, cancer patients surviving with radiotherapy in Nairobi, a Mars rover examining isotopes on a red planet built by teams inspired by her notebooks, she would see a world that still struggles but also one she helped to awaken. Her dream was not immortality. Her dream was progress. And that dream lives. Chapter 57. A world still learning from her. In university ethics courses, her life is case study. In philosophy seminars, her view of knowledge is discussed. In feminist theory, she is placed beside Wollstonecraft and Simone de Beauvoir. In oncology, her methods still save lives. Marie Curie is not frozen in time. She is a verbto. Curie is to seek, to serve, to sacrifice, to solve. Her name is more than historical. It is functional. Chapter 58. Final Reflections from a Mind That Changed the World, fictionalized. In her last weeks, Marie Curie lay in her bed, a notebook nearby, open to a blank page. She whispered to her daughter, "I didn't finish all I wanted, but I gave the world a lamp. It's up to them to carry it through the dark." Irene replied, "And they will, Maman, because you gave them the fire." Part 8. The Woman Who Became Light. Chapter 59. Time Capsule in Glass. In a climate-controlled room in Paris, a set of handwritten lab notebooks rests inside a sealed lead-lined container. Every entry is dated, every number was etched with certainty, the letters swirl with chemical terms and radioactivity readings. But hidden between the margins is something greater, the mind of a genius alive in ink. These notebooks, still too radioactive to touch, are unreadable without protective gear. It is a reminder. Her thoughts were so powerful, they altered the nature of matter. Who else in history can we say this about? Chapter 60. A Letter from a Modern Scientist. Dear Madame Curie, I write to you from a world you helped build, a world of smartphones, gene sequencing, and nuclear power, a world on the brink of climate collapse, of innovation, of rediscovery, and yet, every time we search for truth, we return to your equations. You were the first to show us that the invisible holds the key. You were not just a chemist, you were a map maker of the unknown. We still follow your stars. Thank you. Chapter 61. Her DNA in the System. Marie Curie left no audio recordings, no motion picture interviews, no viral quotes. But her intellectual DNA lives in particle accelerators, radiation detector, radiotherapy protocols, energy policy debates, physics, textbooks, women's STEM conferences, science museum exhibits on every continent. She is now encoded into the very system of scientific learning. In many ways, she is not remembered. She is embedded. She is the firmware of the modern world. Chapter 62. Curie and the Age of Artificial Intelligence. Ironically, in the age of artificial intelligence, where machines now write, reason, and learn, Marie Curie's legacy becomes even more relevant. AI models trained on scientific literature include her works. Radiology AI's use pattern recognition derived from her discoveries. Her methods of trial, error, and verification still form the basis of experimental machine learning models. If she were alive today, she would not fear AI. She would test it, dissect it, understand it, improve it, because she always saw knowledge as a bridge, not a barrier. Chapter 63. The Flame of Human Potential. Curie did not seek celebrity, yet she became immortal. She did not seek power, yet she altered the core of matter. She did not build armies, yet she moved the boundaries of life and death. Her flame was not flashy, it was steady, patient, radiant. In a world addicted to noise, she taught the value of quiet persistence. In a world of instant fame, she showed the power of deliberate excellence. Her flame wasand is the purest light science can offer. Chapter 64. A World Without Fear of the Unknown. Marie Curie once said, Nothing in life is to be feared. It is only to be understood. This phrase has guided researchers through every major frontier. The discovery of DNA, the decoding of the human genome, the deployment of vaccines, the mapping of black holes, the push toward quantum computing. She created not just a technique, but a mindset. She gave humanity a tool to face the voidand, called it curiosity. Chapter 65, A Statue in the Mind. There are statues of Marie Curie in Paris, Warsaw, New York, and Tokyo. But her most enduring monument is not made of bronze. It is the moment a girl holds a microscope for the first time. It is the instant a patient's life is extended by radiation therapy. It is the decision of a young mother to return to school to study physics. It is the courage to apply for a lab position even when the world says you don't belong. Marie Curie is not stone. She is story. Chapter 66, The Atomic Heartbeat. Radium, polonium, and all radioactive elements decay, but their signature remains measurable. The same is true for Curie. Though she is gone, her heartbeat continues in energy released, in lives prolonged, in boundaries crossed. Some say science is cold, impersonal, but in Curie's hands it beat with warmth. She used the most dangerous tools to heal. She used a forbidden space to educate. She used the chaos of the universe to create clarity. In short, she made the atomic realm human. Chapter 67, A Poem for Marie. You touched the stars, but never knelt. You stirred the dark where secrets dwelt. You bore the weight of glowing stone, yet carried it with grace alone. No crown you wore, no throne you sought, but kingdoms rose from what you taught. No fear you held of heat or flame, the atom bowed to Curie's name. And though the world may change and fade, the light you sparked shall never shade. Chapter 68, Legacy in Every Lab. In today's laboratories, a young woman calibrates a radiation machine in India. A graduate student in Argentina purifies isotopes for cancer research. A boy in Nairobi opens a physics textbook with her name in the first chapter. A girl in Sweden writes an essay titled, What I Owe Marie Curie. None of them knew her, yet all of them carry her forward. The lab coat is now worn by millions, but hers was the first. Chapter 69, Final Questions, Endless Answers. What did Marie Curie leave us? Not just radium or polonium, not just a Nobel Prize legacy, not even just a scientific method. She left us a way to live. Ask more than you're told. Work harder than expected. Give more than you take. Question everything. Fear nothing but ignorance. She left us with the greatest discovery of all, that the human mind, when lit with purpose, is brighter than any element. Part 9, The Science of the Soul. Chapter 70, When Silence Speaks. In every great life, there comes a moment of stillness, a moment when the world, the accolades, the noisy all fall away. For Marie Curie, that silence came not in a grand hall or a laboratory. It came in a small hospital room in San Salemos in 1934, as she lay fading bones, weakened by radiation, eyes clouded, hands too frail to hold a pen. And yet, in that silence, she spoke louder than ever. Her silence was not absence. It was legacy. It was the pause before the world took up her tools and continued. Chapter 71, An Elemental Woman. Some people are described by personality. Marie Curie is best described by element, radium, for her brilliance, polonium, for her loyalty to homeland, carbon, for her simplicity, iron, for her strength, hydrogen, for being everywhere and essential, uranium, for the power she revealed to us, light for the truth she never feared. She was not like an element, she was one, stable in spirit, radiant in truth, and fused with fire. Chapter 72, A Universe Touched by Curie. The cosmos contains the building blocks of all matter, but it also holds stories. Among the stars, the name Curie floats in craters, asteroids, and scientific spacecraft, on radiation signatures passing through telescopes, on Martian soil, scanned by machines that read radioactive decay. She never aimed to go to space. But space remembers her. The universe doesn't reward ego, it rewards curiosity with permanence. And that's why her fingerprints are embedded in the fabric of science. Chapter 73, The Weight of a Life. What is the weight of a single human life? In kilograms, Marie Curie's physical body diminished over time. Her notebooks and research weighed perhaps only a few dozen pounds, but her intellectual gravity that is immeasurable, she helped unlock the power that drives stars. She helped extend the lifespan of humanity. She redefined what women could achieve. She created a scientific culture that remains our compass. The true weight of her life is measured not in matter, but in momentum, the momentum she gave to every woman in science, every child with a microscope, every lab that seeks to heal. Chapter 74, A Life of Firsts. Marie Curie was the first woman to win a Nobel Prize, the first person to win 2 Nobel Prizes, the first female professor at the Sorbonne, the first woman laid to rest in the Pantheon for her own merits, the first to discover 2 radioactive elements, the first to use radiation in medical treatment, the first to define radioactivity as a scientific field. But perhaps her greatest first was this: she was the first to prove that intellect, like energy, transcends all limitations of gender, of origin, of fear. Chapter 75, A Woman's Mind Against the World. Imagine being told, you are too poor, you are too foreign, you are too quiet, you are too female, you are too passionate, you are too strange, you are too bold. Now imagine taking all that and turning it into a Nobel Prize. Then doing it again and again while raising 2 daughters, building 2 institutes, surviving scandal, navigating grief, and never once stepping off your path. That was Marie Curie. Not superhuman, just entirely, unflinchingly human. Chapter 76, The Final Gift. Marie Curie's greatest gift was not radium. It was not even science. It was this, an example. She gave the world a blueprint for meaningful life. Seek truth, not glory. Endure pain, but never bitterness. Love what you study. Serve something larger than yourself. Leave the door open for others to follow. Marie Curie walked through fire so that others could walk through open doors. That is the purest form of greatness. Chapter 77, For Every Girl with a Question. To every girl who has been told, you're not smart enough, that's not for you, it's too hard, it's too dangerous, stay quiet, pick something easier. Let Marie Curie's name be your reply. Let her life be your answer. Let her courage be your counterargument. Let her legacy be your permission. Chapter 78, A World That Glows Because of Her. The world is not the same place she left. It glows with new energy. It pulses with new knowledge. It aches with new questions. It dreams new dreams because of her. Because one woman asked why and didn't stop. Because one woman lit the darkness and left us the torch. Because one woman showed us that science is not just numbers or tools or charts. It is human. It is sacred. It is possible. Part 10, The Light We Carry. Chapter 79, A Whisper Through the Lab. In the quiet of a laboratory, somewhere tonight, a researcher closes her notebook. She sighs. She feels tired, discouraged. The experiment didn't work. The results are unclear. Her lab is underfunded. Her advisor was critical. She turns to a shelf. A small black and white photo of Marie Curie stares back. She remembers. This woman once worked in an unheated shed. She purified elements by hand. She endured loss. She faced ridicule. And still she found light in stone. The researcher sits up, sharpens her pencil, and tries again. Chapter 80, The dream that became a discipline. Marie Curie did not merely discover new elements. She created a new language, a way to talk about energy, decay, healing, time. She turned radiation from a mysterious force into a field of medicine, industry, astrophysics, and beyond. She dreamt that one day the atom would be understood. Today, it powers cities. She hoped that knowledge would cross borders. Today, her name appears in over 110 national languages. She wished for women to have equal access to learning. Today, millions of women study physics in her wake. Her dream became a discipline, and her discipline became a global calling. Chapter 81, A Visit to the Pantheon. If you walk into the Pantheon in Paris, past the grand columns and gilded walls, you'll find a tomb marked simply Maria Skłodowska-Curie, 1867, 1934. The light is soft, the air is still, yet, standing there, one feels the presence of something massive in weight, but in meaning. People from all over the world come and pause here. They do not speak. They feel, because here lies not just a scientist, but proof that humanity can rise from poverty, war, exile, and sorrow and build something beautiful. Chapter 82, If She Could Speak Today. If Marie Curie could speak to us now, what would she say? She might remind us, knowledge is never wasted. Even in darkness, the smallest spark can illuminate centuries. She might smile at our Mars rovers and our CRISPR codes and our climate models and say, "Good, now make sure they serve others." She might take a girl by the hand and whisper, "You belong. Yes, you do." And she might tell us all, if it is hard, if it hurts, if no one believes in you, keep going. That's how you know it matters. Chapter 83, The Fire in the Flask. In every great lab there is a flask that once boiled with questions. In every question there is the shadow of Curie's breath. She didn't claim to answer everything, but she asked the right things. She didn't just unlock atoms. She unlocked ourselves, proving that courage and clarity, even in the loneliest soul, can change the direction of the world. If you look closely at a glowing test tube, at a microscope slide, at a physics equation, you might see her reflection. And if you don't look harder, she's there. Chapter 84, A Prayer for the Thinkers. For every lonely mind staring at a blackboard, for every trembling student at their first presentation, for every woman second-guessing her brilliance, for every scientist lost in uncertainty, for every soul asking, "Does this matter?" Let Marie Curie be your prayer. Yes, it matters. Yes, you can. Yes, this is worth it. Yes, this is how we light the future. Chapter 85, Beyond the Atom. Marie Curie began with uranium, but she ended with something much larger. She ended with an institute, a movement, a bloodline of scientists, a new definition of womanhood, a new pathway through science, a new place for ethics in innovation, a living idea that to pursue truth, no matter the cost, is the highest form of life. She began in obscurity. She ended in orbit. Chapter 86, Light Cannot Be Undone. The world will change. Science will evolve. Wars will come. Cultures will shift. Technologies will rise and fall. But what Marie Curie discovered, the structure of light and decay and rebirth, cannot be undone. Her legacy is not just written in books. It is etched into the very laws of matter. What she saw, what she proved, what she built will last as long as the atom itself. Light does not fade. It radiates forever. Chapter 87, The Final Equation. If her life were a formula, it might be this: integrity plus persistence plus inquiry times compassion equals change. It is the only equation you need to build a better world. She was never interested in fame. She had no use for power. She wanted understanding because she believed that understanding breeds empathy. In that way, Marie Curie did not invent science. She redeemed it. Chapter 88. The torch is yours. Now it is your turn. Whatever you dow, Heather, you heal, teach, build, calculate, write, or explore, know this. Marie Curie once stood where you stand. She once doubted. She once failed. She once worked in silence. And she kept going. You can too. Because her torch is not buried in Paris. It is lit in your hands. Carry it well.